Months ago, a quiet act of kindness changed everything: a brown paper bag, a cup of coffee, and a broken man who felt seen for the first time. But what happens when the cameras leave? Kindness doesn't stop, because one morning a new figure took his place: older, quieter, always gone before the town even stirred. She didn't speak, didn't linger, didn't want to be noticed, but someone noticed anyway, and the day she didn't come back, the silence she left behind was louder than any cry for help. What did Marisol discover next? This is what happened: not a rescue, but a recognition. For those who carry their battles quietly, someone still sees you. Welcome to Graceful Valor Stories, where tales of compassion and kindness are told. Let's uncover what really happened. It had been nearly 6 months since the morning the black SUVs rolled up outside Rosie's Bakery, turning a quiet corner of Santa Isabel into something reverent. People still talked about it, sometimes in whispers, sometimes in awe. The photo of Marisol Rivera standing behind her counter, teary-eyed as uniformed soldiers raised their hands in salute, had faded slightly where it hung on the bakery wall, but not in memory. Life, however, had moved forward. It always did. Each morning, long before dawn spilled over the rooftops, the same rituals returned: the hum of mixers, the scent of rising dough, butter melting into warm surfaces, cinnamon lingering on the air like a secret. Rosie's Bakery, nestled between a pawn shop and a boarded-up gas station, still opened at 5:30 sharp, just as it had for the last 11 years, and every morning, without fail, Marisol swept the patio behind the bakery and glanced toward the bench by the recycling bins. That bench, rough stone, its edges worn soft by time, was never officially dedicated. There was no plaque, no flowers, but in Marisol's quiet world, it had become something sacred. It was where Ignacio Torres once sat every morning at 6:10 a.m., never asking, never speaking, just existing, a man cloaked in dust and silence, holding grief in his shoulders like old armor. After he passed, after the colonel came with the letter, after the community finally understood what that quiet nod had meant, Marisol didn't stop the ritual. She still left the paper bag on the bench some mornings, roll, a muffin, a cup of coffee with a tight lid. She told no one she didn't have to. Some mornings the bag went untouched, some mornings it disappeared before the sun crested the mountains, but every time she placed it there, as if someone was watching, as if someone still needed it. The cold arrived early that year, sharp and sudden, the kind of winter that gnawed its way beneath coat sleeves and settled in bones. On one such morning, clouds still low, sky tinted gray with dawn, Marisol stepped outside as usual. Her red apron was already dusted in flour. She carried a simple bag: day-old cheddar rolled, banana muffin, black coffee. She paused by the bench. It wasn't empty. A woman sat there, mid to late 50s, maybe early 60s. Her coat was wool, frayed at the seams, buttoned too tightly at the neck. A thick scarf was wound around her face, obscuring most of it except her eyes that seemed both alert and a little far away. A canvas bag sat at her feet, lumpy and worn, the kind that had carried too many groceries or too many burdens. Her hands, gloved in fingerless knits, rested neatly in her lap. She didn't move when Marisol approached, didn't look up, didn't flinch. Marisol hesitated just for a second, then placed the bag gently beside her. She said nothing, just as she hadn't said anything to Ignacio in the beginning, just a quiet murmur, half to herself: guess the kitchen overdid it again. And just like that, the ritual resumed. The woman didn't speak, she didn't offer a thank you, but after a moment, she reached down and lifted the bag into her lap. She didn't eat there, she didn't linger. Within 5 minutes, she was gone. The next morning, Marisol tried not to expect anything, but at 6:15 a.m., she saw her again, same bench, same coat, same quiet presence. The bag went down, the woman took it, a nod barely visible beneath the scarf was the only acknowledgement. It happened again the day after that, and the next, and the next. No words, no names, no conversation. Just a bench and a silence that wasn't quite empty, but unlike before. With Ignacio, Marisol noticed something different. This woman didn't carry the same guarded weariness, but she didn't carry peace either. She moved with purpose, not drift. She walked like someone who had somewhere to be, but not necessarily someone who wanted to be seen getting there. That's what unsettled Marisol. The woman wasn't homeless, not exactly. Her coat was clean, her boots, though cracked at the heels, were zipped and laced. Her scarf looked handmade, well worn, but careful. Her canvas bag, while fraying, held its shape with dignity. No, this wasn't someone lost to the street, but something about her still whispered vanishing. The way she avoided eye contact, the way she clutched the bag as if afraid someone might try to take it back, the way she never sat back, never relaxed against the bench, always perched at the edge, spine straight as if waiting for a train that never came. She never spoke to anyone, never came inside the bakery, never wandered the block. Always arrived at 6:15, always left before 6:30. After a week, Marisol found herself pausing longer at the kitchen sink, watching the bench through the tiny rear window as she kneaded dough. She didn't even notice she was doing it at first, just glancing now and then more often, then waiting. When the woman didn't come on the 8th morning, Marisol stood still in the doorway longer than usual, brown paper bag in hand. She placed it on the bench anyway, walked back inside, waited. The next morning, the woman returned, same coat, same scarf. But this time, Marisol noticed her limping slightly as she approached, not dramatically, not enough to draw sympathy, just enough to say something hurts, and it's been hurting for a while. She still didn't speak, still didn't smile, but her nod that morning was deeper, intentional, and for a fraction of a second, just as she turned away, bag clutched in hand, Marisol thought she saw her pause, as if about to say something. Then she walked off down the alley and vanished behind the old pawn shop. Some stories don't begin with thunder, some stories start with the softest gesture, a paper bag, a bench, a cup of coffee in the cold, but even the quietest acts can echo, especially when shared by two people who understand that silence is not the absence of need, it's the sound of someone still holding on. And at Rosie's Bakery, sometimes the ones who don't ask for anything are the ones we're meant to notice the most. Some people disappear all at once, others vanish slowly, one piece at a time, until all that's left is their outline, blurred at the edges, holding on to what used to be a full life. That's how Marisol came to see the woman on the bench each morning. She arrived before 6:15, always the same, the heavy coat, the frayed scarf, the canvas bag resting neatly by her feet. She never looked at her surroundings, never glanced through the bakery windows, never checked her phone. She just sat, quiet, composed, as though she'd carved out those 15 minutes of stillness and refused to let the world take them away. She never ate the muffin right away, she never drank the coffee there. She would rise with a calm deliberateness, gather her things, and vanish around the corner of the old pawn shop like a shadow obeying a ritual. But the regularity of it all, it tugged at Marisol, not out of curiosity, not even out of concern, out of something quieter, something that said, "This woman isn't running from anything, but she's not walking toward anything either." So one morning, rain clouds drifting low, bakery already humming with the scent of orange scones and melted sugar, Marisol did something she hadn't done since Ignacio. She waited. She let the woman walk off as usual, taking her bag and coffee, but this time, Marisol untied her apron, slipped on a coat, and followed quietly, carefully, her steps muffled by the soft sweep of early dust along the sidewalk. The woman didn't look back. She crossed two intersections, made no stops. Past boarded windows and rusted mailboxes, this was the older part of town where fences leaned like tired shoulders and for sale signs had begun to sag with time. Most folks had moved out, a few homes had fallen into silence, but not the one she entered. The woman stepped through the gate of a narrow brick duplex and disappeared behind a chipped green door. The porch light flickered once, then stayed on. Marisol stopped across the street behind a cluster of mesquite trees. She didn't know what she was expecting: the door to swing back open, a dog to bark, a glimpse of someone waving from the window. Instead, there was only stillness. Then a light clicked on inside. Through the warped glass of a small front window, Marisol saw the woman set her bag down, unbutton her coat, and move with practiced ease around a modest kitchen. There was no music, no television, just the sound of water being poured into a kettle. And somehow Marisol could feel this more than hear it, a long, exhausted breath. She didn't want to intrude, but the next morning, something in Marisol didn't let her stay in the kitchen. She packed an extra bag, fresh croissant, apple slices, warm buttered bread, and tucked it under her coat. This time when the woman stood from the bench and walked away, Marisol waited only 2 minutes, then followed again. At the chipped green door, she hesitated, then she knocked twice, soft at first, nothing, then the faint sound of steps, a shadow behind the curtain. The door cracked open, no more than a few inches. The woman's eyes met hers, startled, cautious, and Marisol offered the bag without a word. The woman didn't move. "I'm not here to ask anything," Marisol said gently. "I just thought maybe this one could be shared." A beat, then slowly, the door opened wider, not much, just enough to reveal the same scarf from the mornings, now draped over her shoulders. Her coat was off, her face was worn, creased, not by age, but by years of bracing herself for things that never got easier. "June," she said softly, her voice dry from disuse. "My name's June." Marisol nodded. "I'm Marisol. I own the bakery, Rosie's." June's mouth twitched into a faint, tired smile. "I know." She accepted the bag with both hands, held it like it weighed more than it did. "You make things with warmth," she added. "That's rare." Marisol started to step back, not wanting to impose, but June surprised her. "Would you like to come in?" For a moment, inside, the home was dim but clean. The floor creaked, the kitchen was small, a folded blanket rested on the arm of the couch. It smelled faintly of mint tea and old wood. Marisol sat quietly on a worn chair while June poured hot water into 2 mugs. "I used to be a nurse," June said, setting the cups down. "A long time ago." "Before what?" Marisol asked gently. June took a sip, let the warmth settle. "Before the fire." She didn't elaborate immediately, just stared into the steam. "My husband Marco was a firefighter, 29 years on the job. 3 years ago, there was a warehouse collapse on the edge of town. He went in after 2 trapped workers, got them out, but a beam collapsed, hit his spine." Marisol felt her breath catch. "He survived, but not the same." June gestured toward the back of the house. "He can't move, can't speak more than a few words. I'm his full-time caregiver now." She looked down at her hands. "I work night shifts cleaning offices, sleep when I can. We don't qualify for much support, too much pension, too little sense." Marisol felt a swell of emotion, not pity, but recognition. The same quiet ache she had seen in Ignacio's eyes, that quiet refusal to let pain turn into bitterness. June smiled, almost embarrassed. I didn't start coming to the bakery for food, we get by, but that bench, she paused, that's the only place I don't feel invisible. The words were soft, unapologetic, and completely honest. At Rosie's, she said, no one stares, no one crosses the street, people just let me sit. She glanced up, eyes shinier than before. And you never ask, you just leave the bag. Marisol felt something tighten in her chest. June laughed lightly, I know it. Sounds silly, but kindness that doesn't demand anything is hard to find. There was silence between them, then Marisol reached across the table and placed her hand gently over June's. Kindness, she said softly, isn't always about fixing things. June nodded, eyes lowered. Sometimes, Marisol added, it's just about saying I see you. And for the first time since they met, June truly smiled, not wide, not bright, but real, and Marisol understood. The bench had never been empty, it had just been waiting for the next story to sit down. The rain started before dawn, not the gentle kind that softened streets and lulled the bakery into a cozy rhythm. This was different, hard, relentless, the kind that swallowed sound, soaked bone, and turned every corner of Santa Isabel into a blur of trembling window panes and overflowing gutters. Inside Rosie's bakery, the oven hummed, batches of dough rose under linen towels, the scent of cinnamon and butter curled through the warm air like a lullaby. But the bench outside was empty. It was 6:05 a.m. Marisol had already prepared the bag, an extra roll, 2 muffins this time, a thermos of coffee sealed tight. She placed it gently on the bench at 6:10, then she waited longer. By 6:25, the paper bag sagged under the weight of the rain, water darkening its edges like ink bleeding through paper. No scarfed figure emerged from the shadows, no quiet footsteps on wet pavement, no nod. June Alvarez didn't come. By 7 o'clock, Marisol had refilled the pastry case twice, burned a batch of croissants, and barely answered customers when they spoke. Her eyes kept drifting toward the window, toward the bench, toward the rain that fell harder now. By 7:30, she couldn't take it anymore. She untied her apron, told her assistant she had to step out, grabbed her coat, the backup bag of rolls she always packed just in case, and left through the back door into the cold, gray morning. The streets were nearly empty, water gushed down the curbs, her boots slapped puddles. She didn't run, but she didn't walk slowly either. Block after block, familiar houses blurred past, mailboxes leaned into the wind, an old dog barked somewhere, then went quiet again. By the time Marisol reached the chipped green door, her hair was soaked, her coat clung to her arms, her heart pounded, not from the walk, but from something deeper, fear. The porch light was off, the curtains drawn. She knocked once, then again, nothing. She tried the door, it opened, the air inside was wrong, cold, still. The kind of silence that doesn't sleep, it waits. Marisol stepped inside, voice low, uncertain. June, no answer. She moved through the front room, past the tiny couch and folded blanket, toward the back of the house. Then she saw him. Marco Alvarez, once a firefighter, now paralyzed and silent, lay half-covered on the living room daybed. His eyes were wide, his chest trembled with shallow, erratic breaths, one arm twitched uselessly, his skin was damp with sweat, his head tilted slightly, as if trying to call out, unable to. A choked sound slipped from his throat, just once. Marisol's stomach dropped. Marco, where's June? Then a shape, half obscured by the narrow doorway to the kitchen, collapsed on the floor like a crumpled sheet. Marisol rushed forward. June lay motionless, one arm stretched across the linoleum, her cheek pressed against the cold floor, her lips were pale, her breathing shallow. A half-filled glass of juice had rolled to the corner, droplets forming a halo beneath it. Marisol dropped to her knees, checked her pulse, still there. She fumbled for her phone with shaking fingers and called 911. The ambulance came fast, blaring, sudden, out of place in this quiet part of town. Paramedics lifted June onto a stretcher. Another team entered the back room and checked Marco, stabilizing his breathing, adjusting his blankets, murmuring soft reassurances he likely couldn't hear. Marisol stood near the front door, hands clenched, clothes soaked through, heart-aching. Neighbors peered from behind curtains. No one stepped outside. She rode with June to the hospital, sat silently in the waiting area with rainwater dripping from her sleeves. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, the scent of disinfectant clotted her throat. A nurse finally emerged with news. June had collapsed from exhaustion and low blood sugar, dehydrated, malnourished, severe sleep deprivation. Honestly, the nurse added, almost in disbelief, it's a miracle she made it this long. June woke the next evening, her voice was barely audible. Rasped from sleep and shame, she turned her face to the window when she saw Marisol in the chair nearby. You shouldn't have come, she whispered. Marisol leaned forward. I had to. June shook her head, tears threatening. I didn't want anyone to see me like that. I've handled it this long. I didn't want help. This isn't about pride, June. Yes, it is, she whispered. It is. You think you're strong until someone catches you falling, and then it's all gone. The illusion, the dignity. Marisol was quiet for a long moment. Then, in the soft hush of that white hospital room, she reached into her bag and pulled out something folded, a letter. She had written it hours earlier, and after the nurse allowed her into the room while she waited for June's eyes to open, she placed the letter gently on the tray beside the bed. I don't give kindness because I think others need it, Marisol said, her voice trembling. Now I give it because I need to believe there's still something good in this world. June blinked at her, startled. I need to believe that broken things aren't always discarded, that people still notice, still care, not because they're strong, but because they've been weak. 2 tears slid down June's cheek. She turned her face back to the window. The rain had finally stopped. That night, Marisol walked home through streets washed clean, under skies just beginning to clear. Her boots squelched, her shoulders sagged. She didn't feel like a rescuer, she felt like someone trying to hold the thread together just a little longer, because sometimes, these stories, kindness doesn't ask for permission. It shows up soaking wet, heart pounding, breaking into a silence it wasn't invited to, just to say, I see you, and I'm not looking away. The days that followed unfolded slowly, soft and deliberate, like morning light stretching across cooling dough. June recovered steadily. Her body, once on the brink, began to return to itself with rest and real meals. Color crept back into her cheeks, her voice grew steadier, her eyes, once clouded by exhaustion and quiet shame, began to hold light again. She didn't want to stay in the hospital long, she worried about Marco. But life sometimes listens when kindness has already started speaking. One afternoon, as Marisol stacked clean trays in the bakery, a familiar voice approached the counter. I heard about her, said Miss Thompson, one of the bakery's oldest regulars, retired from the city clerk's office, fond of lemon bars and fresh gossip. I didn't want to say anything earlier, but back when I worked at the municipal office, I handled a few firefighter pensions. There's a program, special placement for long-term rehab for families who've fallen through the cracks. Marisol said nothing, she just kept slicing rye bread. By the end of that week, a place had opened up at a specialized care facility just outside Santa Isabel, one designed for first responders, quiet, well-funded, safe. Marco was moved there with full transport assistance and a caseworker assigned. June didn't ask who made it happen, and Marisol didn't tell her. Some kindnesses aren't meant to be named, they just happen, the way warm bread rises even when no one's watching. June never returned to the bench, not because it had lost meaning, but because life had opened a new door. She began coming to Rosie's bakery once a week, not as a customer, as part of the kitchen. Marisol offered gently, only if you want, only when you can, and June said yes, in the same way she had once taken the paper bag, quietly, carefully, with a small nod that meant more than any speech. She didn't come in uniform, she wore her scarf, she tied an apron over her worn clothes. She rolled dough with silent strength and stood beside Marisol in the early hours as if she'd always belonged there. When asked why she was there, June would simply say, just returning a favor. But everyone who worked those mornings, who watched her knead, who caught her smile when she handed over a warm loaf, knew better. It wasn't repayment, it was resurrection. A few weeks later, a new addition appeared beside the old stone bench, not a statue, not a plaque with gold leaf, just a simple wooden sign carved by hand, sanded smooth. Marisol placed it there early one morning before opening, her hands still covered in flour. No ceremony, no announcement. It read, for those who've suffered in silence, here you are always seen. No signature, no dedication, just a message left for anyone who might need it. Some mornings people sat there just to drink coffee quietly. Some mornings someone left a note folded beneath the bench, or a worn coin, or a pressed flower. No one claimed them, no one removed them. Marisol never asked. She just swept around the bench each morning and left the space as it was meant to be. Open, humble, ready. As spring crept into soft rains giving way to desert bloom, life at the bakery carried on. Customers came and went, trays filled, emptied, and filled again. June worked her quiet shifts. Rosa still sold lottery tickets down the street, humming boleros no one else remembered. In Marisol, she still woke before the sun, still tied her red apron, still folded napkins with care, but sometimes before she turned the sign to open, she would sit by the window with a cup of her own coffee and look out toward the bench. It sat empty more often than not, but it didn't feel empty, not anymore, because now it held echoes of Agnosio and June, of names never spoken, of burdens no one ever asked to carry, and even in stillness, it held a truth that Rosie's bakery had come to live by. Not all kindness needs a witness, but every person deserves to be seen. Outside, the first light stretched across the pavement. Inside, the ovens hummed, and in a corner of Santa Isabel, between a shuttered gas station and an aging pawn shop, a bakery baked more than bread. It held space for those the world had forgotten, and gave them back their place at the table. In our darkest moments, kindness still finds a way, often in the quietest places. Not everyone who helps wants recognition. Some just need to know that today someone isn't going hungry, and sometimes that alone is enough to change a life. You may forget the story, but if no one retells it, history stays silent forever. Subscribe to Graceful Valor Stories, where justice is honored, kindness is remembered, and no act of quiet heroism is ever lost.